Okay, so we've talked about existing rivalry and we've talked about power of suppliers, and we're going to talk about power of buyers next. Power of buyers is the same logic as power of suppliers. It's just going to be on the other side of the equation. Who are we selling to? Let me revert real quick back to our airline example, because I'm going to actually step away from the airline example for the rest of this lesson, or the rest of this video, and talk about our original assumption, which is that in this oligopoly we would expect profits to be high, and then we came over here and said, oh wow, we have all these issues, therefore profits are going to be depressed because of this, right? This is going to interact with this. An interesting fact is in the last 35 years, the total profits of every airline company in total for not only all the companies but all the years is less than zero. Okay? And actually, it's only improved. The last 3 years have actually been very good. So it might be approaching zero. But in the aggregate, this industry has not made a profit in 35 years in total. Okay? It's not all because of these four key inputs, but certainly we can understand that a lot of it is going to be because of the value extraction from these key inputs. I mean, there are other issues, but these are certainly going to be major issues in the fact that those companies have not been profitable. So let's go over to the power of buyers. And our power of buyers is, again, same logic, but who is buying from us? One thing I want you to understand what the power of buyers is not. It is not individual consumers getting angry at a company and saying, I'm not going to use that company anymore. Okay? Remember that one of the things that makes a supplier or a buyer powerful is kind of the market share or the size of that company. Individual consumers are very, very small and really not significant. I'm not trying to be mean, but not significant in terms of power over industries or companies. Now, if you made an argument that the buyers were coalescing together, like a union, so imagine you have a buyers union, and then you could make the argument that that buyers union could be powerful and could exert some pressure over whatever company it is that we're talking about. An example of this could be maybe you have a boycott. So a number of buyers, say there are a couple thousand buyers who are angry at some company, and they get together on an online platform and they form a group and they're very organized and they boycott somehow and have commercials or whatever it might be. You can make an argument at that point that would be a buyer group that is powerful. But individual consumers, that's not going to be what we're talking about here. Powerful buyers are going to have large market shares, or they're going to be large corporations, or they're not even going to be corporations at all. They could be governments, etc. So, for example, a powerful buyer could be, Walmart certainly could be a powerful buyer. By the way, get the notion of consumers as buyers out of your head. Okay? Consumers can be buyers. Consumers are not always buyers. So, for example, if I'm Procter & Gamble, and Procter & Gamble sells all kinds of different products. I'll just use diapers. I can't remember what brand of diapers they use, but they make. But they sell, obviously, Pampers or Huggies or one of those big diaper products. My buyer is Walmart or whatever store I'm selling out of. Okay? My buyer is not you, the person who needs diapers for your baby. Okay? You are a buyer from Walmart. Okay? So there's a chain that goes. And so in terms of powerful buyers, if I am Procter & Gamble, the question becomes, well, how powerful is Procter & Gamble versus how powerful is Walmart? Now, that's an interesting question because they're both really large companies. Of course, in that case, it wouldn't be like this. It would be maybe closer to 50-50. I don't know. But let's say we have Walmart and Procter & Gamble. I would say Walmart is definitely more powerful because you have to ask the question, who has more outside options, right? If Walmart didn't sell Procter & Gamble's diaper brand, what would happen? Well, they might suffer a little bit because there are some people who really like that brand, certainly. What if Procter & Gamble couldn't sell their product in Walmart? That would be a major, major hit to Procter & Gamble. So you're going to have to give at least, it's not going to be 50-50, and it's not going to be like the monopoly situation in the last example, but I don't know, something like this where Walmart is extracting more value than Procter & Gamble could, but maybe it's a little bit closer to a 50-50. And again, exact numbers are impossible to get. We're not going to be doing exact numbers. It's kind of the mental model of what does this mean when these two entities are negotiating with each other. So power of buyers, if you're selling through Walmart, that's going to be an issue. How about if you are Lockheed Martin, a defense contractor? 95% of their revenues come from selling things to the U.S. government. And so certainly that's going to be a powerful buyer. The U.S. government is going to basically dictate your be-all and end-all. It's not that Lockheed Martin has no power over the government. Of course, Lockheed Martin is needed by the government because the government can't just switch, tomorrow. But certainly they're going to have more power than Lockheed Martin does in that relationship. And let me bring up a term here that most people have never heard of, and that is monopsony. One buyer is called a monopsony. One seller is called a monopoly. This is not important. I just like the term. So that's going to be powerful buyers. So if you have a buyer group that is highly concentrated or really large and powerful, certainly at that point you're going to have issues that are similar to the issues that we had with our power of suppliers, right? You're going to have buyers that are extracting more value. Therefore, you're going to be less profitable than you originally thought. Now let's quickly revert back to our airline industry, because there have been some interesting things that have happened in 2016 in this industry. How can you buy airline tickets? Okay, well, there are two ways. There are generally two ways. I can go to American Airlines website and buy an airline ticket. That's direct to consumer. Okay, in that case, the buyer is a consumer. But you can also buy from a site, an Orbitz, a Kayak, etc. And now when you have this model becomes more powerful than a direct consumer only model. So it could be that American Airlines, and actually some airlines do this, Southwest Airlines does not you cannot buy Southwest Airlines tickets except from Southwest Airlines website, okay? But most large carriers will facilitate their sales through a Kayak, an Orbitz, Expedia, etc. And so when that happens, those companies end up dictating a little bit more than individual consumers could, and that becomes more of a powerful buyer situation. And of course, there's value extracted because by bringing the person to American Airlines through Orbitz, Orbitz is extracting value in terms of a commission. And an interesting thing that merges kind of our antitrust discussions with this powerful buyer is Expedia and Orbitz they've just merged together. They also own Hotels.com. So a lot of these websites that we go to are actually the same company, just different kind of websites that have merged over the years. And that consolidation itself means that the powerful buyers are becoming a slightly more powerful every year. So again, the same logic, power of suppliers and power of buyers. Now, our two threats are top-bottom. Our threats are going to be our threat of substitutes and our threat of new entrants. And I'm going to go over threat of substitutes first. I tend to think the threat of substitutes seems to me to be the least kind of relevant, but I want to go over it because it is there and it does make sense sometimes. One thing to understand, the threat of substitutes is not Coke versus Pepsi. That's existing rivalry. Threat of substitutes is there another industry or technology that could replace the things that I'm doing in my industry, okay? The example from the Porter paper that I like the best is video conferencing is a substitute for business travel, okay? Which can kind of go into our airline example. So as video conferencing becomes better quality and cheaper, I mean, think about it, you can hop on Skype for free. So as video conferencing starts to become a substitute for business travel, why would that make profitability or attractiveness less? Well, think about it this way. If I am American Airlines or I am some hotel that relies on business travelers, and over the years, I keep seeing at the margins people traveling less for business and going on Skype or Cisco systems for their video conferencing, what might I have to do in order to induce the person to travel instead of video conference? It could be that I have to lower the rate of my hotel room. It could be that I have to offer you really great rewards to be part of Marriott Rewards or American Airline Rewards. Those two things are the same thing, by the way. Lowering the price or offering something that's free but the price being constant are basically the same thing. They both lead to less profitability. And so if there's a high threat of substitutes in your industry, then you're going to have to do things that kind of induce less profitability in order to try to battle with that other technology or other industry. Okay? Threat of new entrants. The threat of new entrants are basically, are there lots of new entrants that could potentially enter the industry? This is the threat of potential entrants. I kind of ran out of room. It's not necessarily the threat of existing entrants that are entering right now. This is the threat of potential entrants. The same logic as the substitutes. If I think that a lot of companies are going to enter my industry, what might I do to try to deter them? Okay? I might lower prices. I might, file lawsuits against them. I might do a whole number of things, all of which may be profit reducing. And so when the threat of entrance is really high, my current behaviors may reduce profitability because I'm scared of the entrance. Okay? Once the entrants enter, that goes into existing rivalry. Now, the threat of entrance is conditional on 8 barriers to entry, and we're going to go over those barriers in specificity and go through those relationships.